So item number 2 is the resolution selecting the location of the proposed kayak launch. The resolution, be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna, that it hereby selects item number 1 or item number 2. Item number 1 is the 12th Street location. Item number 2 is Spencer's Landing. We'll do it in motion form if that's what you care for. I'll entertain a motion for the acceptance of item number 1, which is the location of 12th Street in Vienna.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the location for the kayak launch to be located at 12th Street. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the resolution selecting 12th Street property as the location for the kayak launch, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We don't have to vote on item 2 because it passed unanimously. All right, so now we go to item number 4. Item number 4 is the resolution approving the architectural and engineering services fee proposal from Omni for Jackson Pool.
Yes.
This resolution, it's a resolution approving the architectural and engineering services fee proposal from Omni for Jackson Pool. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that it hereby approves the architectural and engineering services fee proposal submitted by Omni in the lump sum amount of $285,000. Before we open this for discussion, Mr. Mancuso is going to recuse himself because he has a conflict, so we'll come and get you when we're done, Chris. So I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution approving the architectural and engineering services fee proposal from Omni for Jackson Pool.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the selection of Omni for the engineering services for the Jackson Pool. Is there any further discussion?
Melissa, you've really been steering this, and obviously by making the motion, you're good with it. But did that meet everything that you all were looking at as far as choosing?
Yes. There are some things that we will have the ability to dictate. This is about selecting them, agreeing that, yes, this is what we want to pay them. The inner workings of how we, get deadlines and schedules and things like that, the design and costs and all of that stuff, that is all information that we can get along the way and that will be part of that business relationship. But the nuts and bolts of what they gave us in this proposal, that is what we were looking for. I was going to pull it up just to look at it. Sorry, I didn't have it pulled up yet, so I could see it. I apologize. Do you have a follow-up question?
The only other follow-up question I had, and I thank you for the information, was, but in there, and I've not looked at anything with that, but the timeline is there anything indicating a timeline?
No, they are still we still have that goal, and they understand that we want it open next year for Memorial Day. Okay. There may be, as we are designing it now, the whole design will be done. So we'll do, whether it's the bathhouse and the pump house and the pool and any accessory type things and activity things, like let's say slides and splash things and all that. So that the entire design will need to be done all at once. Okay. So when we establish this is the design, that is 100% done. Well, then when we start looking at the timeline of how are we going to get these things accomplished, we're looking at, getting things ordered and bid out and all of those things. That's when we'll be able to say, okay, well, maybe we don't get that particular thing done yet. Like maybe the slide won't be ready, for opening day, but the pool can be. Mm-hmm. And so the slide, the construction may have to be phased out, but the entire design will be all at once.
All at once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and as this progresses, we'll be able to communicate what they're telling us about how long it's going to take to make those things happen.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Well, you know I have questions. So I read this pretty carefully and have a lot of questions. It seems to be like it's kind of vague for the 285.5 that they're asking for. And so I'm trying to understand exactly what that is going to entail. So here's some items of concern for me. First of all, is, and I know that Omni had an opportunity to come in and do an assessment. I don't know if that assessment included them actually going below the deck and they were able to, is there a report for that?
They are going to send that to us.
Okay.
Yeah. We will
Because
have all of that.
I hope that the integrity of the pool itself, the structure itself, is in good shape.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of reservations about that, having looked at the underneath pictures that the first gentleman who went under, I mean, it was pretty scary, actually. I mean, I think we all know that. But so, you know, any of us who've ever done a home repair, you know, you start off with one thing and it's like, okay, and then you've now opened it up and the project becomes so much bigger. So that's a big question mark, whether that gutter system and all that's going to be serviceable, you know, and the pool itself is in good structural condition. Another thing that concerns me about the pool being in good structural condition is that I understand that the liner has to be replaced, okay? But there were some soft spots, I think, on the deep end. So we know that water has gotten between the liner and the concrete of the pool. So, you know, once that gets ripped out, we may see something that we didn't expect. And so that may change things tremendously. The other thing that really concerns me is the phase 2 part, because phase 2 would include the for lack of a better term, kiddie pool. And I know we've talked about zero entry, you know, and that kind of thing. So that's not considered in this phase 1. And the way this scope is written, and I read this, I don't know, probably a dozen times, and I couldn't understand this. It seems almost as if they're going to demolish the baby pool where that is right now.
Yeah.
Are they going to put the pump house in that location?
That has not been determined yet.
Okay. I think, for me, we need to make sure that we have a kiddie pool or a splash pad element or something for the kids that are too young, too small to go into the baby pool or to the big pool. Plus, if you did something like a splash pad element, that also gives us an opportunity for kids with disabilities who may need the use of a wheelchair to be able to enjoy our pool as well. So I think that that's definitely something that if we don't hit that out of the gate when we open up for the first time, we're going to have some really disappointed people in Vienna, because I know Roger's, because you've heard it too, like people, parents and grandparents really want a place to bring their little ones. And that's been a problem for, you know, because we haven't had a baby pool now for 5 years, but so I don't, because this is so vague and I have so many questions, here's my question. Can the pool committee kind of give us an overview of what you guys are thinking about, what you want, okay? Bring it back to council, let us consider it and say, hey, yeah, that sounds great, or change this, change that, whatever, and then have something that's really more of a tight kind of concept to be able to give to Omni and say, here, can you design, what's it going to cost to design around this? Because I think that for the $285,000 that we're wanting to give to them to do this for us, is we don't know if we have to go in and make changes along the way, change the scope, you're going to have the fee of what has to be done. Plus, they're probably going to tack on a little, like a percentage, 10% or something onto that because of the change being done, you know, during the project, if it's significant. Plus, and I really want to see the report to let us know what the structural integrity of the pool is. Because, you know, if they're saying, okay, well, it's good enough for 10 years, maybe we need to think about something else. So I don't know how we do that, if we can put this off a little longer. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to put anything off. I just mean, can we get these questions answered, because this is a significant expenditure of money.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
When the company came in and made their final presentation, the engineering company said, well, I have good news and bad news. And the good news was that the structure of the pool is very solid. The concrete itself is good. No question about that. The bad news is almost everything else is no good.
Yeah.
The guttering system, all of that maintains the water flow is all fine. It does not have to be replaced. So I asked that gentleman, I said, it's been a long time since we put this pool in. I said, if you put a new pool in, what's the material that it's made out of? I expected him to say something composite, aluminum frame, something along those lines. Concrete. Okay. So if we get a new pool, you're going to get exactly the same base and same foundation that we have now, which according to them in the study that they've done is fine. The liner, we could live with that liner for a few more years because the liner itself is not bad. It's faded because of the sun. But at this time, if we rebuild the pool and then 3 years later, whatever, we come back and we say to council, we have to put $300,000 in the pool for a new liner, that's not a good situation. And so when all of this discussion was going on about that, the basic premise is you tear the pool, you tear the deck off of it, you take all the equipment out of it, and then you basically build a new equipment room, you build a new pump house, you build a new changing area for the customers to come in, to citizens, but that the pool integrity itself is fine.
Yeah, and he had actually, we had just a limited, we had a very small glimpse with the work that we had done earlier this year, just to see what was under there, right? And he went into much more detail, and it was affirming to me. After talking to him, I think it was worse than what we even realized. And it was the right decision that we made to close it, 100%, no doubt. So that was reassuring to me to have them come in and see it from that reason.
And the other thing too, this company's built 2,500 pools. So their inspection, they know what to look for. They've done it so many times. And I think that their opinion, estimations, whatever you want to call it, is well-founded.
Sure, I know. I don't know this company. I have no reason to believe they're not anything but, tops at what they do, or they wouldn't have been considered to begin with. I'm just saying the information provided to me, that I don't have this information that, that the pool is, sound. Mm-hmm. Because if it's not, I think that's a different conversation, because then we're not locked into that. We're locked into our space, but we're not locked into that L shape. Yes. And there are advantages and disadvantages to the shape that we have now. I think we've all discussed that. Mm-hmm. But I do have to kind of, from the reading of this, I have to say that the liner seems like it's not, they're recommending that it be replaced. Not that it's just sun faded. And I know that there's a problem in the deep end. I know that for a fact. So that's going to have to be done as part of this. When you say the changing the bathhouses, the changing rooms are being rebuilt, they're just being renovated. They're not being rebuilt, correct? That's what this says.
Not necessarily. Let me see here. Show me what line.
I can tell you that the pump house has to be completely removed.
If she was talking about the bathhouse.
The structure,
okay.
I know the bathhouse.
That's the other end. But the pump house itself has to be completely removed, right, because you've seen the pictures. Yeah. The concrete walls in the basement are just crumbling. That has to be completely redone. Now, the bathhouse, as far as that goes,
Yeah. The bathhouse, we were looking at whether or not it could just be gutted and just use that space, because there's so much wasted space in there. depending on the design of it. Again, I'm looking at this while we're talking here. Oh, there we go, number 5. Existing bathhouse be renovated to include an addition to accommodate the building premise. Yeah, we may be able then to just leave it where it's at and just renovate the entire inside of it. We can design it that way, with the building where it is, and maybe add an additional building for, concessions or something like that. So there are concerns about safety, as far as walking in with your children and knowing that they made it in and not having, bathroom issues and all of that. So yes, it could stay there, and yes, we can essentially just gut it. And because the bathhouse itself wasn't in poor condition, other than just really needing updated badly, and have a smarter use of space. And it could be even that we wouldn't even necessarily have to add on to it. We may be able to just reconfigure the whole entrance part so that it gives us the traffic flow that we're looking for. Mm-hmm. So I think that portion of it, because really when you walk in, because I being there last week, I'm picturing it in my head, sorry. When you walk in, you could just, if we took out the desk and all that, you can walk straight into the pool that way. So we already have that space. It's just not designated that way, Mm-hmm. So we can redo that portion of it. Now, the equipment or the pump house, one of the things that we're talking about is because of the grade of the hill where the pump house is now, they were talking about having essentially like a basement with like French doors. Like, so, I used to have a house that had a full basement, and the access was French doors in the bottom. So you could do that. That way they're not hauling something up and down steps and that kind of thing. So it could still be a 2-layered, because we were talking about where the piping and all that stuff comes, and how that's going to make sense for their system. And I'm not fluent on all of their swim words that they use, but it could still be on that level, but we could design the pump house so that it has access on that level, and you're not using any steps, you're not having to hoist anything, it's all right there. So that, I really liked that idea. And so some of this too, as you look at this, there was a lot of discussion with, I was there with them that day that they were doing the assessment for a good portion of the day. And then the next day when the design team met with them, and they know where we're going with this. They know when we want to open. They know the enough of the gist of what we're looking for, like the function of activities and thrill type things for those older boys and stuff. They know that we want social space. They know that we want to be able to have like extended hours, even to include more people, having special needs hours and that kind of stuff. And so they've taken all of that into consideration. And when we're talking about phases, again, this wouldn't be like, oh, okay, well, let's go back to the drawing board and see what we want to do in phase 2. Like, no, we're going to design the entire thing all at once and say, this is what's going to happen. And then, I mean, they've given us this quote. This is what they're saying they're going to do it for. And there wasn't any kind of addendum like, but if we discover the whole thing is not going to work the way we thought it would, then this is what it's going to be. This is what they're telling us that we're going to pay them. And yeah, so a lot of that thought, like you're saying, like, yeah, we will be coming to everybody with specific design things. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And take that back to them and say, okay, we like that. But this gets the official ball rolling with them. And I would like to see us be able to move forward on this tonight. I know I feel confident after speaking with them, and even with, I guess I could look at it different ways. It could either, one side of it could maybe seem vague, the other could seem like it's open. Hey, then that gives us permission to have conversation and those between the line things. So like if you're talking about timeline and that kind of stuff. So a timeline wasn't determined in this, but that doesn't mean it's not there. We can still be requesting that, and that's part of that relationship that we're going to have with them. So I don't have any reservations. I don't have any. I don't have anything in me that's telling me that that there's more that we need to know about this company to move forward, and that I believe that they will be able to deliver what we're asking for.
And the other thing too that council has to remember is this is just the engineering firm to do the design work for us. When they give us the estimate of whatever it's going to cost to build the design that is chosen, council still has to approve the money in order to move forward. And so if it comes in and you say, oh gosh, I don't want to spend that much money, or I'd like to add, this item here, we can do that. Bottom line is, all this does is it gets it on paper and tells us what our schedule is, but the council has to approve that money. So it's not like this is the final choice, but we cannot move forward. Melissa spoke about this, in all the conversations that we've had with these companies. They've had so much experience that they can show you pictures of pools that they built in other cities, and you can look at them and they're phenomenal. Okay. And then you look at it and say, boy, I'd really like to have one of those. And then at today's cost, it has to be bid. You can't guess. There's no way. So there's another step to this process to where, but if this passes this evening, then the second thing is, then Melissa's design team has to get to work. You can't give these fellows a blank piece of paper. You have to get to work, and you have to say, all right, here's the pool, here's the splash pad, here's the slide, here's the, the pump house, here's that. And then they're going to tell you, well, you really can't do that because of this or this, or the technologies out there is better now. The filtration systems that are out there are way better than what we have. So I think there's some improvements to be made for the water quality and those kind of things. And so, but anyway, I think the people that were chosen by the committee to do this were very, very qualified. And, but ultimately the bottom line is council still has to approve the expenditure of the money. Yes, sir, Tom?
Is time of the essence?
Oh, yes, sir.
Absolutely.
If we started Monday, we'd only have 4 months.
Well,
Building.
we have to give them a design. That's the deal. But they are hooked. I mean, the fact that they've built 2,500 swimming pools, they know all the suppliers, they know all of the places to go to get these things that you want. And so they're ready to go.
I really was encouraged by the fact that I was so happy that we can keep the gutters. Like that was what I was so worried about, because I've heard about like it takes forever to order gutters and for those type of things to come in, and the only piece of it that we have to really watch is the it wasn't anchors. What were they called? Anchors. We'll call them anchors. There were like gutter anchors that go into like each corner and throughout about every 4 feet or so, and that's what holds the gutter in place. So like that's a key piece. So we can, but they know how to do all that, and to preserve that so that we don't mess up the gutter, right? So I was really happy about that. Because that was probably the gutters were probably the one thing that had me the most nervous about whether or not we were going to be able to hit our mark, so.
Well, for me, like I said, there's still a lot of, and it's not a question about the company not being, being able to do the job, or, obviously they're, like I said a few minutes ago, they're a top-notch company. That's not the issue. It's kind of concerning to me if the top priority is about getting it done by next summer. Now, and I say that because, I want it done by next summer. Everybody in Vienna wants it done by next summer. I get the phone calls, and I'm sure you do as well. But it's a huge expense, and so the old saying, you can do it fast, you can do it cheap, or you can do it right. So, I tend to be more conservative. It's like, okay, what is it that we want? Are we taking our time and making sure we're making the best decisions? And I don't know if 285.5 is a good price, a bad price, don't have a clue, but I do know that usually that price is based upon some percentage of what they think the overall cost is going to be. Okay? So I think we have an idea without saying it, but I'm super uncomfortable with us saying that the baby pool, a kids area for little kids, is phase 2. I would rather us do the pool all at once and not have to come back, another summer. There's all kinds of safety to be considered in that way. So for me, I don't understand why we can't have a better idea what we're doing and say, this is what we want to do. This is what the design team has come up with, and council thinks that's a good idea, and here you go. Okay? Because when you're talking about renovating the bathhouses and the bathhouse, okay, you have options there. But I also know that when we had a presentation back last year in April of 21, that concept included raising those so that we can then put them 15 feet out further into the parking lot, and it gives us more space, okay, more deck space. Then, there was that, in that concept, there was the idea of, a splash pad in the corner there. So I'm just having a difficulty with this because it doesn't, for me, and I don't have the information you have, and I'm not, it's fine, but I think it needs to be a little bit more drilled down so that we actually know what we're asking them to do, because I understand what you're saying. They're not saying that they're going to charge us all this extra stuff, but they're going to charge us extra stuff if they have to exchange the scope of the work. And then we're going to end up getting, this change order, that change, whatever, and it's going to start costing money. So for me, I want a more detailed idea before we go and do this.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I can understand what you're saying, Kim, but to me, it sounds like that what you want is what we're asking them to do. And that has to come back to the committee, and the committee, as I feel as Melissa has explained, that in that business relationship between Omni and the committee and the city, that's where we get down, we could say, okay, we definitely want, as they design it, say we want the zero entry and the splash pad in phase 1. Is that, that's realistic. Yeah. So
This piece of paper here has 10 things on it that, what they're going to design for the 285.5. And so that's what I'm saying. I think we should table this for a few days or a week or something and then come back and then make the decision after we get a little bit more information about what the design committee wants to do. What do exactly what you all want to put together, because once again, I still cannot get over this part about the not having an area for the kids that are too small to be in the big pool. Because, when you go beyond the four corners of what's in here, which is vague anyway, when you go beyond that, it's going to start costing you money.
Is there any further discussion?
I motion to table this.
Motion fails for lack of a second. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the resolution approving the architectural and engineering services fee proposal from Omni for the Jackson Pool, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carries 4-1. Okay? The last, I'm assuming we're done with the update on the pool? Or do you have other things you're going to do?
No, that would be it. I
Okay, great.
think
All right.
we kind
So-
of morphed that into one.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Chris can come back in. Thank you, Teresa.
Go fetch him. As my grandma would say, go fetch him.
We decided to go with the motocross track. Sorry. Item number 5 this evening. It's an ordinance amending 10505, the professional services, requiring professional service agreements in excess of $10,000 to be approved by council. There is a second ordinance that's proposed amending 10505 in excess of $1,000 to be approved by council. So we'll have to choose one of the other or none in order to comply with the way this is presented. Be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that Article 10505 of the Vienna Municipal Code Professional Services be amended as follows. Procurement of the following described services shall not be required to be obtained by competitive bidding, to wit, legal, engineering, accounting, financial, and investment, architectural, drafting, and consulting services, provided, however, that nothing contained herein shall prevent or prohibit procurement of any of the aforementioned services upon competitive bids as may be directed from time to time by council. The addition is all professional service contracts of a value of $10,000 or of a value of $1,000 or more shall be presented to council for consideration and approval. So I'll read it in the form that it's in for the $10,000. If it's to be amended to the $1,000 level, then it will have to be done by amendment. Okay? So, be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that Article 10505 of the Vienna Municipal Code Professional Services be amended as follows. Procurement of the following described services shall not be required to be obtained by competitive bidding, to wit, legal, engineering, accounting, financial, and investment, architectural, drafting, and consulting services, provided, however, that nothing contained herein shall prevent or prohibit procurement of any of the aforementioned services upon competitive bids, as may be directed from time to time by council. All professional service contracts of a value of $10,000 or more shall be presented in council for consideration and approved. I'll entertain a motion for the approval on first reading of the ordinance amending 10505.
I have a question. If we want to do the second one, we just don't mess with this first one? Do we want to do the $1,000 one?
All I'm saying is, we have to make a motion to approve it. And then if you choose to amend it so that it goes to the other amount, then it has to be seconded and your amendment has to be voted on. And then whatever comes out of that, then it will go to council for consideration.
Okay, because that's the confusing part, because we actually have two different resolutions. So we're
Well, you have to start with one, Ken.
okay.
All right, this is the one that's on the top of my sheet here, all right?
So moved.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, Chris, you seconded it? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the ordinance amending Article 10505. Is there any discussion?
I have a comment. This is strictly for professional services.
Yes, sir.
I'm a little bit concerned about, because I've seen it in the past here years ago, what gets right down to what exactly is professional services, and there was some disagreements on what professional services was. So, as you read it, it sounds pretty specific about what professional services are. And I just want to make sure that everyone is clear on what that is. And it actually, the issues actually relate to the professional services as indicated.
Okay. All right.
So,
Meaning down the road, if something would come up and there was a controversy on what, well, is this a professional service or is it not professional service? You see what I mean?
I do. And I'll give you an example so that maybe it'll make it clearer for you. There are 100, and I'm using these numbers just to explain this, there are 100 different attorneys in town. And so if you put out a bid and you said, I am looking for legal services for such and such a project, okay? If 100 attorneys bid, you're going to have some of them that charge $1,000 an hour. You're going to have some that charge $100 an hour. By designing or designating professional services, you don't have to take the cheapest bid. Typically in a bidding process, you take the low bid. But because this is a professional service, you know that if you pay the higher attorney for more experience, for expertise in whatever particular field, that's the value that you're getting. And so anyone can bid $100 and get the bid and then absolutely know nothing about what they're doing. It's the same thing. There are certain levels of expertise that you're paying for. Okay. And so that's the difference when it says professional services. You can't disallow all of the skills and the years of expertise that people have built over the years simply based on dollar value in certain situations. Now, if we're going to bid on this particular gavel and you stipulate that it's going to be a clear plastic gavel, then you put it out for bid, you list the specifics, and if it comes in at $5 and the next one's $100, yes, sir, take the $5 one because it's a plastic gavel. Yeah. But you can't do that. And I'll give you a further example, okay, in relating to the fire department. We have all Pierce fire trucks. We do. That's what we've had. That's the fire trucks that all of our members, all of your members, Roger, are familiar with working on. Okay. So when we have to have work done on our Pierce fire trucks, we go to Pierce.
Right.
We get Pierce parts, we get Pierce mechanics, we get Pierce technicians to come in because we have a fleet of the same trucks.
Right.
And so that's why you go to a particular vendor, because they built the things. All right. And yes, there's lots of mechanics out there that can work on equipment. However, there aren't very many of them that can use the specific equipment that your Pierce fire truck has. Okay. And that's why there's a designation for professional services. It's just, there's a level there that, you just because you get, a $5 attorney, you're probably going to get $5 worth of legal help. Okay.
So I asked that this be put on the agenda tonight, and it's not because, there's no competitive bid process because it doesn't really lend itself to professional service, like the mayor just pointed out, and I agree with him. But we have a job of oversight, okay? And so if we have to contract with professional services, which we do, whether they're, attorneys or, engineering firms, we had an assessment done. Any of the things that fit on here, and it's specifically mentioned, to wit, right? I think our number one job as council is to provide that oversight when it comes to the budget and to money. And so there is no oversight at all. So if we bring it back to council and say, hey, we have to hire an attorney because, for such and such work, and to let council know that it's happening and that there's oversight. Okay. So that's why I asked for this to be put on the agenda. For me personally, I would prefer the $1,000 one only because I've paid a few attorneys in my time, and you end up like starting out, okay, $5,000 to retain us, and then 6 weeks down the road, it's another $5,000 or $10,000, and before you know it, you're into it for $30,000 or $40,000 in attorney fees, and that's just the nature of life. That's fine, but council really should know about what's happening, okay? And so that's why once again, it's oversight and for us to be better informed about things that are going on and how the money's being spent.
So I spoke with almost all of the department heads and asked for their opinion on this particular issue. Every one of them was against this. And the reason for that is because of the delay that it puts on the entire system. We have a bidding procedure in place, which was designed by council, that marks off specific increments of spending and what is required to do that. And so from $1,000 down, you're required to get 3 prices. From $1,000 to $10,000, you're required to do other things. From $10,000 and above, it has to go out for bid. It has to be public notice. It has to do it. And it literally takes months to get a procedure done because of any of these purchases over $10,000. It is without a doubt the recommendation of the department heads, the people that actually run this city, that this system that we have in place, they all know how to work with it. They've used it for many years. And this is a situation where they would prefer to see it left as it is. And I agree 100% with that, because I've had dealings over the years with many of the agencies where, if you, for example, you deal with the state on certain things and they require you to do things to meet the system or meet the requirements. There are people out there that have worked with us for many, many years that know our systems as well or better than us, engineers. It's just, you shoot yourself in the foot when you go and say that every one of these things has to come back before council, because it literally will take months to get things done in some of these cases. Our audit, for example, we use the state of West Virginia to perform our audits. There is a system, you can get a audit done by an accounting firm, but because we use the state of West Virginia, once the audit's done, it's done. There's no secondary review because the state wouldn't review themselves. They did the audit. And so because of that, it works to our advantage because we've done it with the state of West Virginia for a number of years. And the state auditor's office is who comes and does it. And there are just many examples. And if this is done, every time we have to bring in someone for a professional service on like Rogers fire trucks, or the communication systems that we have in our police department. Most of our communication systems were built by Miller Communications. They know it. They build it. And that's the issue that I have with this, and that's the issue that our departments have with this is, over the years, some of these vendors have designed it. They've built it. They know exactly what to look for if it goes out. And
there's nothing that stops them from continuing to service us. There's no competitive bid. That's what I'm saying. There's nothing. You say it slows it down. It really doesn't, because you're not going through a competitive bid process. All it is letting council know that you have to engage whatever professional service it is and what dollar amount you think that may be. In the case that I brought up, where we had to have engineering services performed for $17,000, there was no money in the professional services account for the pool to do that. Okay, so that should have come back to council as a budget revision. It didn't. And so then what happened was 2 different line items, one to do with renovation and repair of the building, or renovation of, the second line item being renovation and repair of equipment. Those got subdivided. One was $9,500 and the other one was $7,500 to pay the $17,000 that the engineering firm required to do that assessment. Well, there's the budget process and it has integrity, and we are bypassing all of that when it didn't come back to council to do a budget revision to properly give professional services the money that they needed to go on to do the engineering assessment. This is not, we weren't putting it out to bid to find an engineer to do all that. That wasn't necessary. It's about the money. And if we don't know, if we have this kind of gray area where department heads or whoever can engage in professional services and we're not providing any oversight, I think that's a problem. And I respect the department heads, but I'm sorry if they don't like it, but I think the taxpayers in Vienna like it.
Well, if you got 542-4015 is in the line item budget for the swimming pool, and it's contract services for maintenance and repair of the buildings, and 542-4016 is maintenance and repairs of the equipment. So when this item came up, we went to the city attorney and we said, we're asking for an inspection to be done on the buildings. We're asking for an inspection to be done on the equipments. Those two line items right there were specifically designed or designated for those expenditures. And so that's exactly where these two line items came out of. The city attorney said, yes, that is a reasonable use of that. And so that is why we went forward with that, because that's the exact line items that were approved in the budget. Okay? Buildings and equipment, that's exactly the scope of this engineering study that was done.
I spoke to the city attorney about that as well at length. And one of the things within our city code is that you cannot subdivide. So you subdivided from two different line items. I think there's a reason why you can't subdivide. But, the letter that Omni sent us was basically conduct a survey to evaluate the current conditions of the existing construction. So we're not really making repairs to the building or to the equipment, and then we subdivide it. I'm just saying let's just eliminate all that together, and just say, hey, we're going to provide some oversight when we have to engage with a professional service. There's nothing to keep it from, we're not putting it out to a bid or anything like that. It's not necessary.
Well, I disagree with you totally, Kim. The inspection of the equipment was one of the key factors, and the inspection of the pool, of the underground, all of that were key to this entire project. Okay? You can't go in and repair a car if you don't raise the hood.
I agree with that. Right? That's a professional service.
That's correct.
And yes. You had a line item for that wasn't funded to do that at all.
This was maintenance of the pool and equipment of the pool, buildings and ground, totally within the scope of that. Okay? And it was approved by our city attorney. Okay?
Well,
Tom, you have a question?
No. Can I just make a statement?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. You have something you'd like to say?
I talked to a couple of department heads, and this thing would be very, very cumbersome. Some of the things that they need it yesterday, and they don't have the time it would take to bring it down to this level for relatively small things would make their job much more difficult. And I think the system's working fine the way it is.
I know of no issues or problems that with the current system. I'm trying to think back, using the amounts that, are currently set that we've been using. I'm not aware if there has been any issues or problems as a result of that.
We just had our exit audit with the state, which Kim attended, and we received an outstanding audit again, no findings. We've had an audit with no findings for multiple years. And so, and they look at everything. This is a very in-depth audit done by the auditor's office. Okay? And so I think that, I just think that it's not broken. We need to leave it as it is.
I just want to clarify one thing, Mr. Azinger. This does not change anything as far as department heads needing equipment or stuff like that. This is professional services only. And so, you get into something that's very specific, attorneys, engineers, financial services and stuff. that's not really going to be within the scope of the everyday stuff of what the department heads are handling. So once again, I'm just suggesting this is a good way to provide oversight. And just by the way, that it actually in the ordinance says that if council wanted to go through the bid process for a professional service, they can. That's how it's written. We just don't do it that way. And I think, once again, I can't stress this enough. It's our job as council people to provide oversight. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. I mean, I don't agree with it. I don't think it slows the process down at all. And it's going to be unfortunate if we don't want to provide oversight.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess I have a few things I want to clarify with this, because ultimately what this is doing, it's not saying, we're not restricting anyone in any way. It's just bringing notification to council that, hey, we're going to spend more than $10,000 on an architect or an engineer to provide services. And that's really all it's doing. And, obviously we have to consider and approve those things so that we can say, yeah, that's a reasonable cost. It makes sense that we need to spend X amount of dollars. And I think Kim's right. Those professional services are things that require a specific skill set. Those aren't the everyday mechanics and engineers coming to fix a fire truck or a police car. And I think it would make sense to me that the city council and the community knows how that taxpayer dollar is getting spent on those kind of higher professional services. I mean, that's kind of what I see. So for me, it makes sense that if we're going out for legal services, I mean, obviously we don't have to get into the matter that's at hand, like whatever legal matter that is, but it would be nice to be aware that we are requiring legal services and this is how much it's costing. I mean,
Are you done, Chris?
yeah, I guess is that my understanding of that correct? And that's all that this is really saying, is all we want to do is have some kind of oversight on only professional, no other services, and all the other stuff happens the same way. It's just specific to professional services and anything over $10,000. So if you need to go for anything less than that, then it's the same. But it's for any kind of larger ticket items. I think city council should be aware of those things.
Okay. Tom, are you done?
Well, sometimes, say a piece of equipment in the police department is down, that's critical to their job. They want it done yesterday.
There's also
Our communication tower, which is up on top of the hill in Jackson Park, we've been struck by lightning. We've had issues. And for that matter, and Chris, when you look at things of what it takes to actually run the city, under normal circumstances, things run just fine. But when things go wrong, there are things that have to be done, as Tom pointed out, that, the police department can't wait. The fire department can't wait, all right?
Yeah,
And so, but no. But if you change the language on this thing, then you're going to throw this open to every time, because we have various professional services that we use throughout the year, okay? And that's the reason why it's in there, is to give you the ability to not have to choose the lowest price to get the quality of service that we need.
Yeah, and we're not doing that. We are still allowed to go out and select whoever we want to for those services.
Mhm.
It's just anything that's over $10,000 that should be brought to council so we're aware of it. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. And obviously in emergent situations, those are emergent situations, and we can handle that.
It's actually covered in the ordinance right here, Part C, and it says, in case of an actual emergency upon which a department head, with the prior consent of the mayor or council member liaison for the using department, may purchase directly any supplies, materials, or equipment which immediately, blah, blah, blah. So it's already in here. If there's a situation, as Mr. Azinger points out, where, at the police department something happens, that's an emergency situation, has to be dealt with, and it's it can happen without having to come back through council.
Yeah, the emergency situation may be somebody's opinion too. They can say, well, that wasn't an emergency situation. It just makes it too cumbersome.
Any further discussion? Then I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the ordinance amending 105.5 requiring that any, let me read it again. Be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that Article 105.05 of the Vienna Municipal Code, professional services, be amended as follows. 105.05 Professional Services. Procurement of the following described services shall not be required to be obtained by competitive bidding, to wit, legal, engineering, accounting, financial, and investment, architectural, drafting, and consulting services, provided, however, that nothing contained herein shall prevent or prohibit procurement of any of the aforementioned services upon competitive bids, as may be directed from time to time by council. The amendment to this is all professional service contracts of a value of $10,000 or more shall be presented to council for consideration and approval. All those in favor of amending it to add the clause $10,000 or more, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. The ordinance fails on first reading, 2 to 4. Okay, that concludes our agenda for this evening. Are there any council comments? All right, I'm going to take 3 minutes of your time. Okay. I know, John. 3 minutes. Put the clock on me, son. Adam, keep the clock. 3 minutes. So earlier this evening at the council forum, Mr. Lockhart spoke about his rabbits and the wonderful things that he does with the FFA, and the 4-H program for the kids. What Mr. Lockhart failed to tell you is that Mr. Lockhart is my next door neighbor. I have lived in my house for 22 years, and I've had Mr. Lockhart for my neighbor for 13. And so years ago, when Bob's children were much smaller children, they raised rabbits as exhibits for the 4-H fair. At that time, they had a very limited amount of rabbits, all right? At any time, and Bob told you as he made his presentation, he's had in excess of 100 rabbits in his side yard at times. Now, the other day before the fair started, he had over 30 rabbits. These are not rabbits like you see bouncing around the neighborhood. These are gigantic white rabbits that are bigger than a football. Okay, they're beautiful. Okay, and so I spent 17 years in Mineral Wells as a business owner. I love the kids. I love 4-H. I think it is absolutely wonderful that these kids take the responsibility of raising these animals from very small to where they get to market. And I have bought everything from rabbits to chickens to lambs to pigs over that course of 17 years to support the kids. This has nothing to do with the kids or their 4-H projects. This has to do with a neighbor that is in a residential section in the city of Vienna that identifies himself as the last family farm in Vienna. There are no family farms in the city of Vienna. It's a residential section, okay? And as you all are aware, you cannot legislate good neighbors. Now, this past Tuesday, there was a hearing in municipal court because the Lockharts were cited by our code enforcement officer for this putrid smell that's there all the time and the excessive flies. As I said, I've lived there for 22 years, and I would have not complained. Do I hate it? Yes, I hate it. It's less than 10 feet away from my house. But one of the neighbors, who's an elderly lady, called me and she said, I can't even go out on my porch. She has a picnic area on the back of her house. And she said, I can't go out on my porch without being swamped by flies. And she showed me the fly strips that she's put up, and they're literally covered with flies. And so at that time, I said to Kevin, you need to go take a look at this. And Mr. Lockhart made the reference that he didn't even know where the rabbits were. It's in the middle of a 10-foot alley. There's nothing around them, okay? And so he walked up, when he got within 30 or 40 feet of him, the smell is overwhelming because they don't take care of the rabbits. They don't empty the pens, they don't empty the buckets. And so that's when he cited them and said, you need to clean this up. And so when the hearing was, they were given 2 weeks to clean the pens and all that stuff up, and then they'll be re-inspected tomorrow and see if they've made any progress. When they were given the citation, I was mowing my backyard. And so if you take a look at this right here, my lawnmower right here, and that's my backyard. I have one gate that I get into my backyard. And that's that gate right there. I open that gate and I drive my truck into the backyard. When you blow up that same picture that's right there, this is what you see. This is Mrs. Lockhart with the buckets and with the trays that were filled with this rabbit, which he is calling fertilizer, with the rabbit droppings. And she goes and she cleans these things right in front of my gate. The only gate that I can drive my truck through, okay? And so I'm driving through these piles of rabbit droppings, and I get it in the tires in my truck, and I drive into my garage. So what do I get to smell? All right? This picture right here is of the rabbit pens, and can you see the fly that's right there? You want to tell me that's not excessive flies? And that's one. The last picture that I want to show you is this one right here. This is my yard. Green strip that you see right here, that's my yard. That's my fence. And you see those giant piles that are right there? Can you see the granules that's right there? It's buckets of rabbit droppings. You can't legislate good neighbors, but I don't know of a good neighbor that you've ever had that would empty their rabbit pens on someone else's property and walk away. Okay? So whenever this comes to the hearing, you know, it's not me against the 4-H or me against the kids. I love the kids. I've supported them faithfully. Okay? But you got to be a good neighbor. Okay? Can I give it 30 minutes?
Well,
Okay.
close.
Thank you. All right, council, thank you tonight. Chris, thank you very much for your work on that. It's so great to see that as a picture, okay? I mean, it gives you a real good visual. Melissa, thank you so much for your work with the pool. I hope you and your design team can come back very quickly. We are on a time deadline. If we need to schedule extra council meetings for that, for you to bring a presentation to us, we need to move forward. Okay, because we have to make a decision on what we want and how much money we're willing to spend. So at any rate, thank you both. I appreciate the work that you've done. Okay, with that,